The recording has started.
Bear with us, we're just preparing the broadcast.
unless you invent no words. Words. Describe. I should have said the poet. So beautiful. So beautiful. Maybe people need to see what I've seen. They need to see.
These are the spiritual as much as physical voyages of the co-federation solar sun our starship planet Earth, restored to heaven on our every earth as our spiritual, genealogical, local, global, universal voyager and shared her and his family community enterprise. Our new millennial year's mission to rediscover and re-understand, sustain, and explore are and all are in fact familiar new worlds of family community, of the tree of love, life, and light throughout the solar system and universe, to restore, renew, and sustain our and new life and new sustainable civilizations, past, present, retroactively, and now, rebalance, and future, always balancing, to lovingly, genealogically, and boldly become and be space-time travelers whenever and where we have any dimensional reality, all in part been before, if also never been before, in alternative space-time lines that are circles, which are of the universal EQ, IQ, and SQ continuum, balance, combinations of the ever-expanding circle which spirals and grows, budding and blooming in space-time. Love and live enlightened, ever young, long, and prosper all both in each and every one. Engage your heart, mind, soul, and body, for we all, both and each both and all, can, must, and marvelously and miraculously make it so.
In the thunderous blast, she merges, her eyes on fire, the mighty priestess. She is risen from the nativity of Condor. She is risen from the fires of the earth. She is risen.
Are you there?
She is risen.
We are risen.
She is risen. She's risen.
We are risen.
May the circle be overwhelmed, unbroken. May the love of the goddess be ever in your heart. Bury peace and bury not, bury me together. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be. महालक्ष्मी मृडप्रिया महारूपा महापूज्या महापातकनाशिनी महामाया महासत्त्वा महाशक्ति महारवि महाभूता महेश्वर्या महावीर्या महाबला महाबुद्धि महासिद्धि महायोगेश्वरेश्वरी महातंत्र महामंत्र महायंत्र महासना महायागक्रमाराध्या ओम महाभैरवपूजिता महेश्वर महाकल्पक महातांडव साक्षिणी महाकावेशमतिथि महात्रिपुरसुन्दरी चतुष्षष्टि उपचाराढ्या चतुष्षष्टि कलामयी महाचतुष्षष्टिकोटियोगिनी गणसेविता
Am I hearing someone there? I'm hearing clicking. Is there someone on the line?
Celestial right. No. Words. Words. To describe. I should have said. Oh, so beautiful. Other people need to see what I've seen. They need to see.
This day I call the heavens and the earths as witnesses intercessorily for and hopefully and prayerfully not against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose love and life with light, so that you and your children may live. For I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not your, our new millennial law.
Okay. I've learned a good tradition. Maybe better to make sunflower or purity of blackness. This is Anna Marie singing Christmas, and I am Cherokee, Cheyenne, Blackfoot, and Alabama, Dakota. And I am also a French, English, and German. Vitukuye Iraqi. That means we are all related. We embrace the new millennial golden rule as the law of Alltimate of the sacred ground that is Mother Earth, and all the planets of all the universes.
Welcome to our Starry Hours broadcasts. We plan to do one for about an hour now and take a little break and come on again in about an hour and another hour broadcast. I am Astrea Marayama Rajel One Family, Tapao Equinox True Q, the first but not last or only cosmic Christ of the planet Earth and all the universal planets. I am a risen apotheosis, a human being who has become capable of opening the stargates, eternally young, and immortal. I am a space-time traveler. I have discovered the source of all virtue. And the source of all virtue is an anthropological choice toward virtue and goodness that grows out of egalitarian society rather than patriarchal society. I have delivered, with assistance, as you heard, of the white-capped buffalo women, the new millennial golden rule for this and all enlightened, loving, living planets. The new millennial golden rule consists of 3 components. Laura's little needle attention there. 3 components. And I want to say, before I go into that my family, my dearest Kazina sisters, who I know, and others around the world who are also my Kazina sisters, who either have already articulated the need for gender parity or are moving in that direction quickly now and will be co-hostessing these broadcasts with me. And their next generation, our next generation, female and male, age 37 and younger, are with me becoming the first circle of co-secretary generals, co-saviors of this planet and of the universe in connection with this planet. I have confidence that although I am a relatively new voice and many people might want to argue, which is okay, with my new rule, that ultimately, they will all come to accept it. Now, I would like that process to be easy and comfortable for everyone. However, there is an enormous amount of resistance to an egalitarian culture if people have been socialized into patriarchy. And the majority of people of our planet have been socialized into patriarchy. Now, there are many female voices in the story of humanity that have come forward for the need for egalitarian government and society. And there are many male voices who have also done so. But when you live within a patriarchy, you often don't hear of what they actually said and did. We now know from archaeological finds, in Europe, in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, and possibly as far as India, that a civilization that many people have referred to as Atlantis was the longest survived civilization with peace and satisfaction and happiness for all of its family, community, citizens of all the civilizations known on this planet. The archaeologists, many of whom are women and many of whom are men, have made this possible for us to know. Interestingly enough, the biggest clue about this was found by an archaeologist in 1884, an archaeological team in 1884. But very little has been spoken of this. There was a marvelous, miraculous film called The Goddess Remembered that was played on all Canadian television in 1989. And part of what was discussed on that film, an important part, was Atlantis, the Minoan civilization and the ruins that are there, that reveal that a civilization that worships a goddess aspect of nature, literally worships it spiritually, and integrates that attitude into their governmental decision-making, fully empowering women as the decision makers as much as men, and maybe even a little bit more than men, is a society that sustains itself in peace and great productivity, great science and artistic and sports endeavors of pleasure for all the people, but not one of slavery, exploitation, or war. Now today on our planet, we have a very sinful and shameful condition. Billions of people live in poverty. Even within North America especially, there's a lot of poor people in a wealthy country. Now, there's different kinds of poverty, but generally poverty is associated with a lot of stress and brings forth disease and substance abuse, family, domestic abuse, and most importantly, depletes the contribution of so many millions of people of their genius to the progress of humanity. Divine democracy is productive of the human genius. That's why the people who first started this notion most recently in the North American continent, and I'll talk about them. It is the family of Mariam Lambert and Payne and Tom Lambert Payne and their contemporaries, many of whom were women, who especially appreciated what they did, and also people of color, indigenous people, people who were not looked upon as important by the so-called powers that be. They were among the large number of people who then called themselves the colonists, who were from England mostly, in North America, who decided it was time to separate themselves from the monarchy of King George and from the aristocracy that characterized England of the time. And there was a great experiment begun with the distribution of common sense in January of 1776. My family, that you have seen the pictures of, and I'm going to show it to you again. And they are members, I should say, of what is described here. If you go to this, we have all have a dream to make reality now. It'll also link to another section of the website, which shows all the representatives currently already in the global democracy of divine democracy of the new millennial golden rule of Earth and planets. It's composed of women from every continent, specifically including last shall be first homeless women, as well as university professors and experts on anthropology, psychology, political science, economics, sociology, psychology, and the human story, her and history, as well as women in all continents, which tends to be a very large number of women who are seeking equality and have expressed that in one way or another and are trying to live it out in one way or another. And their youth, our youth, my youth, because I am what you might call the great clan mother of the planet Earth. And our youth, female and male, age 37 and younger. Now I'm going to show you the pictures of people in my family and related families that I've been in contact with and am continuing to be in contact with, to bring them eventually as co-hosts and what I call co-secretary generals, who are the family community embodiment of balanced, reparative and egalitarian society and functional, sustainable government for the planet Earth and all the planets of the universe. There is one of the aspects that we want to focus on. As you look at this picture of our great grandmothers at the top, and then here on the right are all the Shekinah currently with us on this planet right now, and on the left, and on the right are their and our great and grandchildren, female and male, the children of these Shekinah, the nieces and nephews of I and these Shekinah, and these children who are age 37 and younger are what we call the next or younger generations of what is here implied as divine democracy and articulated outlined as a functioning divine democracy. Now, what these people will eventually be doing is a very simple task. They'll be acting, you might say, as general secretaries as much as secretary generals, because they will be communicating something rather simple to every neighborhood on earth. That we can all love thy neighbor as thyself, as thy family, because all people on earth are today at most 50th cousina and 50th cousin. Cousina is the European word for a female cousin, from one another. Your neighbors are your family. You can have a family reunion everywhere you go. You can begin to call people cousin sister and cousin brother. I have friends who will do that with me, and I do that with them. I do say to people we can adopt one another, as well as recognizing that we are already genetically linked. Most people carry common ancestors fairly recently. If you go back a couple of 100 years, most likely everyone that you know has a common ancestor with you. So our daily life is one of a potential for great affection. If we regain our ability to regard people not as strangers, but as sisters and brothers, and we say smile on your sister and smile on your brother, as a beautiful song of Bread in the 1960s or 70s, I can't remember, implied, only they often, so many of the songs left out the name sister, but now more of them are a little bit more aware of that. If we do that and we begin to practice decision making within our local communities, recognizing that once linked by the internet, there are also global communities, and that as we do that, just as the computer is such an important part, if you watch the science fiction, successful science fiction, which is very much based on science of Star Trek, that once the computer is engaged and people have access to the entire story, her and history of humanity, that a quantum leap of intelligence occurs for all the people who have this, and simultaneously it unlocks our ability to become a spacefaring and, in fact, Stargate opening civilization. So the computer is a key element and shows that great progress has been made among humanity, at least on technological developments. And the other big component of this re-evolution will be also related to this grain of sand, silicon, that goes into silicon chips. It is this grain of sand that goes into solar panels. We now have the ability to have an unlimited source of energy with virtually no cost, completely sustainably. And of course, there's other forms of renewable energy too, which have similar benefits, obviously wind and hydropower and geothermal and other forms of energy that do not pollute, do not run out, do not cost anything, once a basic ability to gather the light is achieved, which we already have. So you would think that with these incredible benefits, everybody in the world would already have a computer and everybody in the world would already have a solar panel. But no. But no. And you know why no? I'll tell you why. Because there's a little feature of the decision-making process that got stuck, especially in North America, and it is called patriarchy. And that's the P word that is bringing us another P word, planetocide. We have another option, partnership culture, gender partnership culture. And that will bring us another result. Paradise on Earth and all our planets. Better than Atlantis. Atlantis risen. My family has heard me say this many, many times to them and call them these people here. This bunch of people, these women and these young women and young men have heard me say this lots of times to them, and I'm saying it to them again. I'm hoping they're watching. I have no idea if they're watching or not. But I email them and let them know that their faces have been shown and that they're welcome to be co-hosting and co-hostessing and co-hosting. We really need the women, optimally, the older women would gather first. and recognition that they have apotheotic potential. In other words, they can become goddess-like, or in science fiction language, like equinoxes or the noxes of Stargate, and or the Omidasala character of Stargate, the ascended being, or the true Q of Star Trek, who by concentrating their thoughts and their ability to think in terms of past, present, and future in space-time, have the ability to save even endangered planets. I believe that as long as there is someone on this planet who has made the connection sincerely and with love and with daily outreach to other human beings, that the key to change is going from a patriarchal society to a reparative one to women, and then and youth and minorities, and then an egalitarian one, a fully interconnected egalitarian one without national boundaries being very important or even necessarily continued, actually. But I'm not against the present continuation of some element of identification with a national region as one's heritage. What I am against is the notion that we need nations as nation states anymore, and that our governments are organized along that paradigm are what's really necessary. What's really necessary now is neighborhood government, with the recognition that as soon as neighborhoods become connected via the internet, the other forms and structures of government that we felt we needed under patriarchy and a more primitive stage will wither away. And we will be one nation called the planet Earth. And we will have enormous insight into the interconnections of all the heritages and hues of people on this planet as a rainbow of enormous contribution, with a great deal of overlap, more than they realize, because, let me just get you back another thing to look at here, because all people of many heritages are, in fact, you see these circles are intersecting. They have common ancestry somewhere here and there and here and there and here and there and here and there. And we will discover that as we discover this about ourselves and begin to show respect beyond boundaries and communicate more both locally with our neighbors and our extended family and our global neighbors, that the mix of shared cross-fertilization of benefits will lead to this: the opening of the stargates and our connection with many other worlds. And you see on the circle here, we've got two circles. One is a circle of all females together, and the other is the circle of the females with their youth, female and male, age 37 and younger, as our first co-secretary generals. Now, we're not leaving older men out of this. We want older men to participate, and there are many excellent older men. And there are many older men who are not patriarchal. They also, many of them have been waiting, and some of them have been helping to bring about a change toward a female respecting governmental and economic process, and that regard that as more healthy for the males as well, for the men, because it will bring them a less stressful culture and the greater likelihood of attaining eternal youth and eternal life on this and all planets. Like the true Q, you've probably enjoyed watching the character of Q played by an actor on Star Trek. Well, all men can be that way, only a little bit more compassionate than he was. Because the other episode that's so critical in our understanding of this is the one about the young woman wearing her all pink and all gold outfits, very simply dressed, very simply humble person of enormous genius, who by her concentration of thoughts is able to communicate the key element to save civilizations. and to save people from mishaps and problems. Now, I believe that that key thought is that they have to be aware there is a difference between patriarchy and parity. That is the key thought to save life. That people who keep that thought and don't resist it too hard, or at least hear it enough so they'll get used to it, will eventually be able to open the stargates and have eternal life. And it's only those people who never hear of it and are living in such a suppressed way that no one among them talks about gender parity as the key issue. Those people, as they say, where there is no vision, the people perish. So we have made it a point to reach out to people that we love as much as we can. Some of them have impediments that are all born of patriarchy. And where there are pockets of people who don't hear about the difference between egalitarian society and patriarchy, there is great danger. Now, there's great danger throughout North America because our media deliberately censored the natural impulses of women and men to have an egalitarian society that were rising in the 70s and the 80s, particularly the late 60s, the mid 60s, the 70s and the 80s and 90s with some intensity, and early 2000s. All over the planet, news of gender parity was breaking out all over. But our media in North America deliberately censored that news. Therefore, North American women have kind of very mentally disturbed mental state right now. They have grown up hearing all about equality and freedom, but they are socialized to a culture in which they can only at best get a little bit up on a glass ceilinged ladder that doesn't lead them very far, except a very stressed life with no time for their children. Or the other path is to have only time for their children and no ability to express their genius as adults in a community decision-making context. So those two categories that women fell into in North America, either kind of quote the mommy track or the career track, is a false red herring. The Europeans have integrated the two. They have balance of gender in love and work for women and men, multi-year family leave, more vacation time. And we in North America, for complex reasons, partly related to my own family's being caught in patriarchy itself, my own delays because I was caught in it without knowing, without realizing what I was doing. What I look back and see is I missed opportunities to gather the women of my family and community during the rising time of women's feminism in the United States, and during the most optimal and easy time to make a transition. Our family was spread about geographically for complicated reasons, and there were patriarchal factors in our family that made it uncomfortable for me, even though I was a very bright and intelligent woman, to present my thoughts fully. And when I did, I often met with many, without realizing it, I now look back on now, patriarchal comments, patriarchal reactions. Not only that did men often not listen to what I have to say, or interfere with it, or interrupt it, or patronize it and demean it, but also women followed suit. And many of them, not all of them, many of them, instead of supporting me and other women in this endeavor, they turned coach, you might say, and they did not support, and they ran for cover under the codependency of patriarchy, not recognizing that when you do that cumulatively over many millions of people, that results in a structure of society that results in the death of the society. Once people are socialized into patriarchy, they have a habit of trying to maintain it.
And there are many reasons why people become so easily socialized into patriarchy. In general, it's the low status of mothers and women in general, the low status of mothering, and the notion that a person who mothers or parents intensely and with great affection and love is incapable of being present when decisions are made. Now, that may have made some sense in an earlier time when travel was difficult and we didn't have a computer and radio and other ways to communicate quickly over vast expanses of space and time. But we do now. So now it doesn't apply. Patriarchy really doesn't work anymore, and it's not going to. And everybody's going to get feedback soon. Now, I said this would be a didactic broadcast, and I do want to say a couple of things about this day and this date. There were many people born in January and did things in January that were important. And the month of January kind of starts out with the delivery, especially important to North Americans, of common sense. Common sense was written, it came out of a family. The family was Mary Lambert, who married Tom Paine, and their family was the Lambert-Paine family. Mary attempted to have a baby. She died in childbirth, and the little girl was passed also in childbirth. Now, I believe we can bring them through the stargates. The husband, Tom, who I want to make a revelation, I believe that Tom was a spiritual reincarnation of the Apostle Thomas, who was a doubter, a skeptic of organized religion, and also a skeptic of anything that he could not see the value of. He needed proof that something worked, and he needed some proof that it would work for everyone, not just for men or women or just a few people. So Tom Paine, who wrote the words, "My country is the world and my religion is to do good," also wrote the words, "We have the power to begin the world anew." This is a new millennium. This man's deliverance was, I believe, related to the Essenes who gave forth the company of Miriam of Magdala and her family, and Jesus of Nazareth and his family, and their communities, which were shared and interrelated. In fact, I believe myself to be the first cousina of both Miriam of Magdala and Jesus of Nazareth through different members of their families. That would make me a niece of Miriam of Magdala's mother, and associated and also connected to her aunts and her cousins and cousins. And the same with Jesus of Nazareth, that I would be a niece of Miriam of Nazareth, and I am her niece, reincarnated. And now I am not alone. My family, like Jesus of Nazareth and Miriam of Magdala and Jesus of Nazareth, had sisters and brothers in the family constellations of cousins and cousins. And I believe that my family with me, when they embrace the new millennial golden rule, which is the fulfillment of Miriam of Magdala and Jesus of Nazareth's words that female and male are equally anointed or equal in Christ, is the way it was put by their followers. But the word Christ means anointedness. And this was a common thought among Essenes who were also likely influenced by ancient Atlantis. Now we have the archaeology to show that the ancient Atlanteans did visit the Galilee and left artwork and obviously other forms of interaction there. So what I am saying is that the Bible that we know of, the Judeo-Christian Bible, is a neighbor to Atlantis. They were love thy neighbor neighbors. And now we're going to bring those societies together Now, the North American common sense that Thomas Lambert Paine delivered in January 1776 formed a government that was based on full equality of women, with them able to hold vote and office, as well as including indigenous people and people of color. No slavery was allowed in his vision, and that there'd be no property requirements for public service. His vision was very clearly articulated and sparked the revolution in a pamphlet which he gave anonymously at first and then announced that it was he who wrote it. He gave it early in January, and also it was published to a larger audience on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1776. By the time July came around, a slave owner wrote the Declaration of Independence, and by the time 1789 rolled around, common sense was betrayed. Women were kept out, indigenous people were kept out, slavery was allowed, and people who were slavery had no vote, and also and no decision-making ability, and also there was a property requirement, as there is today, because you cannot get on the media to run for anything unless you have a lot of money, i.e. property. So we completely ignored common sense, and now we're almost 250 years later without any common sense, and as a result, our society is in the end stage of empire. It's falling apart. It's trying to seize other areas and keep the empire going, but it isn't working, and the environmental consequences and the social consequences are becoming so great that the Titanic is sinking. This empire is sinking. So that's one of the holidays. Now, today, the 29th, was Tom's birthday. However, Tom had a wife, Marion Lambert. We don't know when her birthday was. I would suggest it might have been in spring. And she may have been a risen Kazina or herself, Mariam of Magdala, a slight reincarnation, or a partial, I call partial, not slight, partial reincarnations. Every person who's born is unique in their own combination of infinite diversity and infinite combination, but they also carry the spirits of other people who have lived before and have not finished their great work and wish to pass it on. So in every family there is ancestry who is working on this paradigm shift, almost in every generation on the planet since the fall of Atlantis. And everybody has folks like this on their family tree. But our family is associated with some of these very famous families. Also, tomorrow is the date of the celebration of India of the Kapadia and Gandhi family, the givers of the ability to use truth force, satyagraha, nonviolent protest, to end colonialism and to get the oppressors out of a people's land. However, that work also was not finished. I was reading about how much Mahatma Gandhi wrote, because his wife was very busy taking care of their children, and also they both lived on an ashram much of their life, and when they weren't imprisoned, both of them were imprisoned frequently. And the letters that Martin Luther King wrote from the jail is part inspired by his knowledge of Kasturba and Mahatma Gandhi, who were both imprisoned because Kasturba spoke on behalf of seeing the British leave. And she was imprisoned along with, and sometimes separately from, her husband. So I was reading about the women of both these revolutions from England. Both of them were talking about separation from a monarchy and an aristocracy. England continues to be a monarchy and an aristocracy, and it's having a lot of social unrest. It's one of the places in Europe with the smallest representation for women compared to other Europeans. The Anglo society, as it developed from the English Empire, is a domination society. And we have many manifestations of that continuing in the United States, even though we thought we separated. For example, one of the issues is that the Anglo Society of England tended to erase a mother's name on marriage, whereas in other societies, you know, it's interesting, even Canada will allow a woman to keep her name as her born name as her legal name. But in the United States, very widely, the women give up their name upon marriage. This is not typical of the Dutch or the Spanish or the Latin Americans and many other societies. So it's an indicator of the patriarchy here. Now, I've been looking up the women who worked with contemporaries of Tom Paine, and of course, one of them was Abigail Adams. I found that Abigail Adams also has a power birth date, November 11th or November 22nd, depending on whether it's an older or newer calendar from their times, because they use a couple of different ones. And it's a very great power date. It's right around our election day. And if it was the 22nd, it was the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And it's also the day that our Kazina, Lynn Margulies, who is the mother of the Gaia Effect, who I begged to run for president, but didn't take me seriously, passed away. So we're kind of between 2 months of 22nds here, 11th and 22nds, and very interesting dates. Now tomorrow, as I said, is the date. And by the way, I wanted to say something I just read tonight on the internet that I didn't know. Abigail Adams was very famous, and she was a contemporary of Mary Lambert, but Mary Lambert never actually made it to the United States. But they both knew, likely, of another woman, Mary Wollstonecraft, who had written 2 excellent essays of the Enlightenment, one called The Vindication of the Rights of Women and The Vindications of the Rights of Men. And right around that time, Tom Lambert Payne wrote a book called An Occasional Letter on the Female Sex. And they all called for equality for women. They did so carefully and gradually. And Abigail Adams' letter was just to her husband. She was not allowed to put this in a newspaper. She couldn't make a Google broadcast. She wrote to her husband, John Adams, "Remember the ladies, without them men will be tyrants." And you know what? He didn't listen to her. He said to her, "Well, you know, your tribe," which was the way he referred to the female gender, "will be no different than the Negro and the indigenous." So I don't remember what he used for it. "And we men will not want to give up our power to such a tribe." He put her down, his own wife. Then she became busy raising the kids. And the rebellion, she said that women would foment if they were not included for full rights in the Constitution, did not occur. That was a terrible loss of common sense. And many of the women at that time, as Tom Lambert Payne's wife, Mary Lambert Payne, died in childbirth, it was the loss of a lamb, a sacred lamb, a female lamb, and her daughter, a female light giver, that was lost. Now today, not far from where these people lived in New Rochelle, New York, when they were here, and when Tom Paine was here, and his associates and the people he interacted with, then likely he did have some interaction, or certainly knew of Abigail Adams. He ran aground, as she did, as a lot of people did, with who John Adams and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were really hanging out with. They were hanging out with the men property owners. They were hanging out with people who is sort of the 1% of the time, only it wasn't that extreme then as it is now. And those guys kept the other people out. They kept the women out of the revolution, except as seamstresses and making the food. And they split according to their gender roles. And as a result, instead of transforming England, which is where Mary Lambert and Tom Paine were from, both England and the United States fell back into an exploitation culture more intensely. And they did not really get rid of monarchy because the United States had its big business plantation owners who were almost like monarchs, and slavery, worse than serfdom. And so the dream was lost due to patriarchy, due to John Adams saying no to his wife. Now, how many instances of that in the human story in history are there? Now, Mahatma Gandhi was more like Tom Paine. They wanted the women in there. They recognized that women had compassion and that without them, men would be like Trump. Big fools with no compassion. Over time, that's what would happen. So they included the women, and because they had a more generous and divine concept of democracy, they included indigenous and people who were brought in as slaves, freed of their slavery, and they included everyone for education and everyone for democracy decision-making. And so this was divine democracy. Now, we had other women who in the years since then, while women were kind of emerging from this blow that happened to them, when John Adams and the other guys, Tom Jefferson, etc., and George Washington, had ladies that didn't mind going along with them even though they ignored the ladies. The ladies caved. They didn't have as much education as women do now. They had a lot more excuse to caving. But we have the same problem going on in North America. The women are caving and have already caved because they've been deliberately misled by a controlled media and puppet politicians, both male and female, to try to think of their world, to be presented with a world that never discusses gender parity and never discusses the difference between patriarchy and egalitarian culture. So it has literally created a wall in their minds and a scar. And American women are scarred. They find it difficult to talk about anything real in terms of empowerment. They act as codependent protesters at best. And as a result, Big Brother is busy becoming Animal Farm and destroying the entire planet. So the way out of this is to recognize the pattern, to not let the women fail to foment the rebellion that they failed to in 1776, that Abigail asked for, that Miriam Lambert would have asked for had she lived, and that Mary Wollstonecraft was fighting for in England. And then if that had happened, then England and the United States would have never had to go to war. There would have been no dead soldiers. They would have just had freedom in both places. They wouldn't have a queen or a king. They'd have had common queens and common kings. Not completely bring that into his work, and the women don't seem to know it. So one of the things that we're going to do is make sure that they look at these pages on the internet and understand that to bring people to the promised land that Martin Luther King said he would get to, we have to have gender parity, and we have to have the best way to bring it about quickly, which is the new Millennial Golden Rule, which has parity of political, economic, and a interactional process that is comfortable for both women and men. And you can read about this at 5050now.wordpress.com. Now, I'm getting back to our families. Here we have these other families that are currently of different heritages in the United States, and there's more people of different heritages. We've only offered a couple here because there just isn't enough room on the screen, and I didn't make the full circle. Really, a full circle would add, I'd have a Hispanic circle here. I'd have a Chinese Asian American here. I'd have a Hindu Asian American circle here. I'd have a Middle Eastern circle here. And the Middle Eastern situation is one where there is fratricide. Jews and Arabs are brothers and sisters and brothers of the same family. It is the mistake of the chattelizing of the women that Abraham did. That was a big mistake, and it was different from Atlantis. I don't know what the time period was on it. I'd have to look back. But the argument that actually ensued, you might say, the covert relational aggression between Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah was never remediated. These women didn't get together on a peace table, and now their sons and somewhat daughters are fighting one another, and the Middle East is going up in flames. The key to the peace of the Middle East is to bring the women together, but the women have not themselves done quite enough of that, although some women have brought together congresses of women in the Middle East who are of all these heritages to work together, and they have worked together well. So that we know can occur, and they're part of our government. And we know that the indigenous people of North America gave the idea of a constitution to the Ben Franklin was a big friend of Tom Paine. He admired him very greatly. And actually so did Thomas Jefferson. They admired him, but they set aside what he said and went along with plantation owners and so forth. And so this is now, which said we were going to talk about the women. Mary Lambert was a contemporary of Mary Wollstonecraft. And there were a lot of women who were following those ideas, and there were some similar ones in the French Revolution, like Olympia de Gauche. And also that was where also this Mr. Lambert Paine wound up when he was totally ignored in North America. He went to the French Revolution and tried to help there. They mostly totally ignored him too, and he was jailed there too. So, you know, domination culture tends to jail just as it jailed Jesus. He was jailed. It was a little bit better. They didn't crucify Tom Paine. They just ignored him. But common sense is definitely the way to remember our world. Now, we have other births of this month that I have talked about. Gina Davis, a Mensa genius who's with us now, who runs the Gina Davis Center on Media and Gender, who has talked significantly about gender parity at the United Nations, but is not able to confront the fact that the United Nations has become co-opted by the fact that the very media that she has her institute to cover has not covered what the United Nations does and did for gender parity, especially the Beijing Guidelines for Women, Platform for Women, and other events in other countries. And her media that she's talking about, she's dumbed down now. She only talks about what it talks about of cartoons and how the media balance of filmmakers is and so forth. That's entertainment. How about reality, news? Our news boardrooms are completely headed by men. The women who try to buck that system are ejected. It is a patriarchy, and the women who fit in with it are very electrocomplex women willing to work for sociopathic old men. They've been socialized to think that's okay. As a result, the North American people are so dumbed down on the issue of gender and parity and real democracy that we have to expect Mother Nature will pull the rug out from under us. It has to happen that way until people adopt the new millennial golden rule. We've given people the insight that as soon as they do, they will have eternal life on this and all planets, because it will open the fountain of youth, possibilities of longevity through the combination of female and male genius, and considering that issue and the lowering of stress of society. And also, it will also open the stargates, because we know that, for example, the stargate concept grew out of the work of the family of Mileva Merrick and Albert Einstein, and another family called the Rosen family. Rosen is what we're calling our stargates now. Of Einstein, of Merrick Einstein, a marriage of the female and male on Einstein, one stone, a planet. It's a living stone. But So I have studied that family, and I know had they not fallen prey to patriarchy, and had they had balance of love and work, which they did not have, and Mileva became so overwhelmed by her family responsibilities and the prejudice against her in physics that she dropped out, and Albert was left with a bunch of old men that took his ideas only so far and that didn't have the muse of women's intuition developing the science in a better way. And so we lagged on developing the stargates. And now in my family, our Cousina Lynn Margulies married into first the Carl Sagan family, Sweet Sagan, and that is the family that will help us understand that everything is all connected in the universe, and that God wants us to honor every female as much as every male. And when we do that, poof, genius happens, stargates get open, eternal life, longevity, no stress, solar power, renewable energy, no wealth inequity. However, everyone is enormously wealthy. Even the wealthier people are wealthier than they were before because they become true Q. They don't have to keep putting money in the bank. They will have snap the fingers power of space-time travel, because we will have the genius to break through those barriers in our understanding. When you separate the female and relegate her to only family activities through her entire life, and also degrade the value of those activities as we do under the gross domestic product, you'll read about that under the New Millennial Golden Rule, you wind up with a society with no bonding, with a kind of weird science that harms people as much as it helps them, such as nuclear bombs and Fukushimas and Exxon Valdez's. Oh yeah, we have great drilling platforms, but we could have been having the power of the sun 25 years ago. That's what women wanted, even larger than numbers than men, although men want that also. But when you get it into the hands of a few old patriarchs, they want to hoard the power that they think they have, which is actually an illusion and delusion, because they have no power of love with their children or grandchildren. They only intimidate and exploit people. That's not real power, as Buddha and Jesus and every major prophet, female and male, has thought of as power. And it certainly isn't Atlantis risen, is it? Now, we have to know that I am also a risen version of the Astrea goddess, who is the goddess of Statue of Liberty. And I am standing up for you all on these broadcasts every day, because I feel Goddess God hears that, and as long as I do that, you huddled masses will have some safety. But really, it isn't enough. You have to become co-Christ with me. So go study the New Millennial Golden Rule. And I could tell you, I have young people in my family right here. I have women here who are goddesses who don't know it. I have young women and men who are goddesses and gods who don't know it. They're already equinox true Qs. The women also are capable of it. I know their gifts. They have the ability, but they don't interact with each other intellectually as a circle, and neither do and therefore they tend to keep these young people from doing the same. And as a result, it's stagnating, and the families are decaying, and the children are becoming less healthy and idealistic, and the women are becoming more drone-like and downtrodden, and also relationally aggressive toward one another, and because they're displacing their lack of parity. And this is very dysfunctional, and you multiply this across all the population of North America, and you have an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. You have personal catastrophes and degradations ready to occur, and you have an environmental catastrophe. So I've been warning everybody. I've done what I can, and I do every day what I can to reach out and bring everyone here. As soon as you get that circle together, this planet will be saved. I'm not kidding. It's really that simple. I've said it to many people. They don't quite agree with me. They don't quite believe me. They don't take me seriously. I'm only a PhD from Loyola University that was Phi Beta Kip at the University of Michigan. I'm only one of the few women who have ever run for president in the United States, and I did run on a gender balanced ticket in the year of the millennium, and coordinated similar tickets around the world. And I now understand that action, which I did before I knew my genealogy, did qualify me as Cosmic Christ, the leader of divine democracy, the risen Astrea. But now I know who I was at that time, and now I can say it to you. Just follow the new millennial golden rule, embrace it as your own, and you will have eternal life. So I love you all. We'll be on another broadcast in a moment. And know that these people, as they interact and come to understand one another, are of one related family that can choose the new millennial golden rule, as you heard Anne Marie and Ma Patricia from our Native American families, our host families on this continent, have already done. These are heavenly hostesses, and they've already done so. And I'm the ultimate heavenly hostess. I am the Statue of Liberty risen. Huddle masses, come visit, because you don't have to huddle anymore. You have the new millennial golden rule. You have enormous powers. You just don't realize it yet. Turn off television. It's the wrong paradigm. Screwing up your thinking. Conventional wisdom is an oxymoron. Turn off the television. Turn off the television. The boardrooms are owned by old men who don't understand anything about the times they're living in, and their wives are trophy wives, or intimidated or divorced, and they have no contact, and there's no love there. Don't let those people rule your thinking. They need your thinking. You don't need theirs. So, okay, so that's our broadcast for now. We'll have another broadcast in a little bit. And I'm going to say namaste, and mitakuye oyasin becomes mitakuye kosevirall. Go to the 5050now.wordpress.com. Read the essay, The Days the Earth Stood Still. Read the sermon, under the sermons, We All Have a Dream to Make Reality Now. I haven't mentioned a couple of other people who were born in this month. I should mention Marija Gimbutas, who gives us modern, archaeologically based goddess theology returned to this world. And Zuzana Budapest, who similarly organized women to worship goddess, something that had been forgotten for thousands of years. I mentioned Gina Davis, and there are others, and there are people you know. And what we have to do is reclaim people who are confused by patriarchy to understand that it is egalitarian society via the new millennial golden rule that will bring you and everyone you know eternal life and open the stargates. As long as I continue to preach this, this planet has a chance, and everyone that I know has a chance. So I'm not going to give up on anybody. I'm going to keep trying to get you to co-host this and co-host with me. And eventually, when things get bad enough from the path that you're taking, you'll come back to my path, and we'll do this together. Every blessing. Namaste, Bahava, L'chaim Shalom, Mitakuye Oyasin, Mitakuye Kosevirall, Kongs Pax, Ko Peace Culture. To your best, Sedleric, Ciao, Sanzavag, Chus, Sayonara, Chop Chop. I don't know all the languages, but I will have time to learn because I have already entered the Q continuum. And we say, most importantly, love and live longest, young, ever young and longest, and prosper everyone and all. Longest, I mean eternally. And we say that again. We celebrate and we say all the blessings and all the greetings of all our heritages and all our languages of our earth and our earths. And one more thing I'll say about these broadcasts. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. You saw yesterday on Google Doodle, yesterday or the day before, the inventor of television in Scotland. Well, there was an inventor of television in the United States right around the same time. And that family lived in Silver Spring. And the wife's name was Grace Love. And the husband's name had the word kin in it. And the whole point of broadcasting is to bring the heart as well as the brain. The heart as well as the brain and the spirit of grace and love into what is broadcast. In other words, to bring the family and the community in not keep them out. So I generally keep our phone lines open during these broadcasts. They were open for about the first 3 quarters, and then I had a problem with the phone. We keep the phone line opens. Our family members know it. You are going to hear more announcements about that, and you'll be able to call in too. Every blessing. See you in a little bit.